good? Either way.
Moms are just like,
Hello everyone.
Hello.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today, also for your patience, so I can apologize for the delay. My name is Sister Darian. We're going to start off our prayer libations, and then we're going to where the libation is. So everybody knows this prayer libation report? Okay, great. So anybody, just for the record, it's just a process in which we pay homage to our ancestors. So I would like for you to stand, please. Everybody stand, and Andalea, for women, you're going to put your hands right over left. I'm going to cross this way, and for men, it's left over right. You're going to cross over your chest. Right. And so we'd like to open up by asking for permission from the elder in the room.
Order 53. All right, please.
Okay, Ashe. And Ashe is just a confirmation or affirmation in which you're agreeing with everything that's being said within the circle. Ashe. So first we'd like to pour libations to the gift of life. Ashe. We pour libations to the creator that woke us up this morning. Ashe. We pour libations to all the African civilizations on the continent of Africa. Ashe. Such as Zulu. Ashe. Such as the Garba. Ashe. Such as Bambara. Ashe. You may call our names as well. Ashe. 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 Next, we'd like to put libations to those ancient kings and queens that ruled over those nations. Ashe. You may call out those names as well. Ashe. Ashe. Queen Nzinga. Ashe.
Ashe. Queen Tai.
Ashe. 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 Next, we put libations to the Ma'aka. Ashe. To those that did and did not make it to the Middle Passage. Ashe. Next, we put libations to the American countries, our states. Ashe. To our African American freedom fighters. Ashe. Such as Ella Baker. Ashe. Penny Lou Hammer. Ashe. You may call our names. Ashe. Ashe.
Mary McDowell.
Ashe.
David P. Richardson.
Ashe.
Ed Robinson, Kevin Robinson.
Ashe. Ashe. Next, we have to call out bishops, our personal ancestors. Ashe. You may call out those names as well. Ashe.
Margaret Ann Starr.
Ashe.
Mary Margaret Starr.
Ashe. 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 We pour affirmations to the Freedom School movement. Ashe. We pour affirmations to all the scholars continuing on the education in college and different skills and workforces. Ashe. We pour affirmations to the babies who are yet unborn who continue on our legacy. Ashe. And lastly, we pour affirmations hoping that the ancestors will accept this libation. Ashe. 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 We'll also start with a moment of silence as well. The moment of silence begins now. Ashe. Ashe. So we're just going to start off with our introduction. Essentially, once again, just want to thank everybody for coming out today. This is the opportunity, just to have a one-on-one dialogue with Brother or Dr. Carr here today, who is also,
the right person.
Brother Dr. Carr, definitely. But just an opportunity just to open up the room to talk about different discussions and as it relates to the freedom schools, academics in Philadelphia, social justice in America, all those things of that sort as well. So we encourage everybody to keep an open mind and just be willing to affirm yourself and give yourself within this session? All right. Oh, Dr. Kelly, I want to turn over Dr. Sister Kelly Mickens, who will be talking about freedom school history.
So I hope everyone doesn't mind if I just sit and have this conversation. Is that okay? I don't. One of the things that I love about the Freedom Schools movement is that part of us, our official shape is the circle. And so I love that we sit in circles, and I love that we teach in circles, and all those kinds of things. So I was asked to summarize the Freedom Schools history, and so I can talk for hours and hours and hours about that, but I'm going to spare you all of those things. Just to say, the short version is, Freedom Schools have been in existence for as long as freedom has been an issue for African people in this hemisphere. So we came to this hemisphere largely, the large numbers of us came to this hemisphere under duress. We came as captives. We came as people that did not have our freedom. And so immediately, it's like from the slave ships, folks were like trying to imagine, what do I need to do to get out of this thing? And so since the beginnings of enslavement, people would have these clandestine spaces that they call freedom schools, or they might not have called them freedom schools, but they were definitely spaces where young people and elders and older people knew that in order to learn things, we need to learn things to get free. Equating education with emancipation has been our way since we've been here. And so along those lines, there's been a whole bunch of different iterations of freedom schools. But the freedom schools that we kind of, the tradition we come from, kind of comes out of the 1964 freedom schools, the Freedom Summer, that was created and sustained by COFO, which were the Council of Federated Organizations. And so these were all these different organizations that recruited students from all over the United States, mainly from the North, because a lot of people didn't understand what was happening in the South. So this is pre-internet, this is pre, mass television even. Like this is so some people had television, and this was still in the days where television was an event, and people would go to people's houses and watch television and things like that. And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to dramatize what was happening specifically in Mississippi. It was happening in other places also, but Mississippi was doing some of the most egregious things to black citizens. And so at that time, they were saying to black citizens, you have to pass this test in order to vote. And then of course, like the tests that they would give would be these impossible tests. So some of them would be frivolous tests, like how many bubbles are in a bar. So other tests were like these impossible tests that even the test giver couldn't answer. So for instance, interpret this passage of the Mississippi Constitution. And even the person who gave that test wouldn't even be able to say, oh yes, you did that well, or no, you didn't. They would just do that to try to intimidate black people from being able to assert our freedom. And so during that time, in terms of schools, of course, schooling was also the pits. It was terrible. Like schooling for black children was just very terrible in Mississippi as well. So Mississippi for 64 was about two major thrusts. So it was about education, and it was also about voting, and also developing an alternative process for voting, which I think is key in this moment, quite honestly, and I don't know what Dr. Carr has to say about that. I think being able to study ways that people have tried to envision how things could be different. Like, so the Mississippi Freedom Democrats were not the same as the Democratic Party, the original Democratic Party. So that was just a really, for me, it was a really fascinating way that people would go around Mississippi and talking to different people and developing their own delegates and developing these different votes. And so they went to, Mississippi, so they organized for voting, and then they also organized the schools. And so the schools were being run by college students, and even some high school students came both as students and also helping to bring the schools about as well. And so this whole tradition of kind of the each one, teach one kind of thing really does come out in 1964. 1964 there was a lot of controversy about it, because there was people really think that things started in 64, and they didn't. There were a lot of black people that were doing a lot of organizing in Mississippi already. And so the 64 summer is one that people talk about a lot, because what they decided to do was utilize a lot of white students to come into the space as well. Because they knew when the white students come down and the white students are having their lives on the line, then a the country was gonna care. Like, so there were a lot of organizers and a lot of black people, unfortunately, that had organized prior to this that went missing and people didn't care about them. But when the white students came down, and the three probably most popular people who have been murdered in the movement, Cheney, Goodwin, and Schwerner, it's because two of them were whites. And so it just kind of paralyzed and terrified the vast majority of the United States. Like, how could people who want to go down and do good get kidnapped and killed? Like, so for some people's mind, it was a mind blower because they thought things like that had passed. And it certainly hadn't, and unfortunately it still hasn't, because unfortunately we still have organizers being disappeared and things like that. And so that summer was spent just really in an organizing tradition, and even though the Mississippi Freedom Democrats were not seated at the Democratic National Convention, it spawned a whole bunch of different movements all over the country. And so one of them in Philadelphia was the Philadelphia Freedom Library. And so there's a Bible that's still in Philadelphia today by Dr. John Elliott Churchville, who got his training down in Mississippi during that '64 Freedom Summer. And then he came to Philadelphia and started something right on Ridge Avenue called the Philadelphia Freedom Library. And it was just this beautiful space where young people, so it was children during the day and adults in the evening. Because if you've lived your whole life in this society, chances are there's lots of adults that don't have a lot of this information also. And so they gathered, like I mentioned, mostly children and during the day, and then adults in the evenings to teach various things. And so that went on for a while. And then in the early 1990s, I'm kind of jumping a few decades, in the early 1990s, the Children's Defense Fund decided to resurrect the Freedom Schools model. And at that time, there were different organizations in Philadelphia that decided to join CDF, Children's Defense Fund, which is an organization that's based out of Washington, D.C., to get the training and the curriculum from their national training. And so in 1995 is when we had our first organizations in Philadelphia that did CDF Freedom Schools. And then in 1999 was actually when the first junior servant leaders, exactly. So some of the folks that are in this circle were there in 99. I love it. So 99 was the first year that these different organizations that were dealing with CDF one-on-one decided, so they got support from the school district of Philadelphia, and in my opinion, doing some of the best investments that could ever be made in education, investing in this summer program. And so we went from 2 sites to 6 sites to 22 sites around the city. And so there was just this way that and Freedom Schools just had this appeal intergenerationally. So of course there were the children that were in the program, but then for the high school students, it was about helping them to also be students, but also to be servant leaders. So you're doing work and you're studying work. And I think that combination is one that has just truly it's worked for us throughout history, throughout the millennium of history. We've always had apprentices. Apprenticeship is something that we have always loved and doing. And I think it's also key that we're meeting in a union hall. And so unions oftentimes are talking about apprenticeship. So this is something that I know well, I need to teach you to do well, now you need to go out and do it well. And so that's one of the, or some of the things that Philadelphia Freedom Schools has. I could talk for hours and hours about this, but I'm going to pause myself. If anyone has any questions, of course, I will gladly interview. But I'm going to pause myself and I'm going to hear what Dr. Carr.
You want to talk to you?
Okay.
Asante sana.
Say again?
I said Asante sana.
Of course.
So I'll be providing an introduction as well to Dr. Carr. So we got people with credentials in the room, so I'm going to be referring to my source with y'all permission. So Dr. Carr is an associate professor of Africana Studies and the chair of the Department of Afro-American Studies at Harvard University. He also holds a PhD in African American Studies from Temple University and a JD from the Ohio State University College of Law. As it relates to the quality of education in Philadelphia, Dr. Carr has led a team of academics and educators in the design of the curriculum framework for Philadelphia's mandatory high school African American history course. He is also a co-founder of the Philadelphia Freedom Schools movement. He has also completed work in Ghana, Egypt, South Africa, Brazil, France, and England. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Carr.
That's it. No, we all family. I know you got everybody here. So there's probably, I don't know, who is not directly connected to Philadelphia Freedom Schools. Definitely, you're the only one, right? So you are connected.
I'm
Just
not
no
connected.
question. So I guess, but the interesting thing, first of all, thank you all for being here. And Isaiah's still working. I mean, y'all got this hall. This is very nice. I'm sure there's a lot of ancestors in here who are turned over in their graves, the white ones. Very serious, because the sister who, she was saying this used to be the Poor Riches Club. I was asking what the provenance of this place was. She named two of the white men who spent time in this building, probably right in this floor, dancing and getting drunk. Bob Hope and Walt Disney. So, you know, I'm sure Walt Disney isn't mad because he picked black people's pocket for $1 billion with this Black Panther foods over the last couple of months. Finding out how to weaponize black power. White profit. Great. They forgot, this does not mean for Wakanda, but I guess you. That's hard to say that I'm not going to talk long because between Coloma and Ashray, we got video, so I'm just an inveterate note taker. Y'all know that, so I'm just going to scribble. But there's been only one thoroughgoing written narrative of the Philadelphia Freedom Schools iteration of the movement, and you just heard the person who has done it, and that's Mama Dr. Kelly, Sister Kelly Sparrow Mickens. I'm gonna mess it up. You know what I'm saying? So, but she gave you a thumbnail sketch of it, and I was thanking you, brother, for bringing us in this circle. I think it's important though, because as I look around, I realize that for many years, I don't know how many years, Kelly, we bring people over to the Guild or wherever we're eventually saying Sankofa, usually around what, Thanksgiving break or holiday break, there will be a Freedom Schools reunion of sorts. But this number, even though it's small and physical number, in terms of representation, I think every part of that rebirth moment is represented in this circle. And unless we go around the circle once, probably people who have been involved in Freedom School, at least Philadelphia Freedom Schools, the reborn Philadelphia Freedom School, might not know, even though we think we know. So, if y'all don't mind, we all go around and just say who we are and how we got into this circle in terms of where we came into Freedom Schools or where we interact with it. We do that once, and then we can have a conversation. I may say a few more things than we have, but that's all right with y'all.
So once again, I'm Darian, and I joined Philadelphia Freedom Schools prior in like 2004 as a JSL. And over time, I was a junior servant leader.
For the record, anyway.
Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. I was a scholar, then a junior servant leader, then a Fannie Lou Hamer trainer, then a William Still trainer, and now I'm serving as an intern as well. And so I'll be looking over the Peace Center, and that's located in North Philadelphia, and that's just how I got involved.
So I'm Isaiah Thomas. I am currently the executive director of Philadelphia Freedom Schools. I actually got involved in Philadelphia Freedom Schools in 1999. I was a junior servant leader. Over the last almost 20 years now, I guess I've been a junior servant leader, site coordinator, intern, project director, trainer, and excited to be a part of this rebirth initiative that for the first time we have our own entity. And I think that is a different dynamic just from a business perspective. The ideology and the culture, of course, is always going to be there, but to have our own entity puts us in a position to move forward in a different capacity. So I'm excited about that.
Let me, for 1 second, y'all make sure also where you came in. You were in Frankfurt, weren't you?
So I started in Frankfurt Freedom Schools. Actually, no, that's wrong. I started at Congreso de Latinos Unidos.
As a work, but you went to Frankfurt High.
I did go to Frankfurt High School, and I went, and so when Freedom School started in 1999, there was no Frankfurt site. It was only Congreso de Latinos Unidos. And so I was at Congreso, and once Frankfurt opened, that second year opened, then I switched to Frankfurt. I was in 11th grade. Cool.
That's well, Frank. What were you stopping?
At the Friends Neighborhood Guild. Yes.
And meant train and everybody and work everything around.
Aaron Johnson. I started in 2004, I believe, as a JSL, as a student at Dental Tech Institute Charter High School. been with Freedom School ever since, kind of going through as trainer, intern, site coordinator, project director, and now helping with coordinating the program this year. That's it.
I have been Sister Dr. Kelly, but I'm in a month's time, I'm gonna be 45 years old, so I'm gonna take on my mom, title, Mom Dr. Kelly. I started off at President Woodville, and I went to, at the time, it was Germantown Settlement had a site, my second year. My third year, I was at United Communities, which is in South Philadelphia. In my fourth year, I went to my fourth and last site, which was at Mill Creek. It was a Mill Creek site, and that was in West Philadelphia. And then I went to the central office. And then from the central office, I went to school to study and write about freedom schools. And then I came out of school and I started working at St. Hope Freedom Academy. So that's 20 years of freedom schools. 1998 to this year. This is my 20th year.
I'm Kenny. Through osmosis, I've been drafted in by Kelly. And that's kind of fun.
And you also know, but you also were the Freedom Ride, so.
Come on, tell me, let me tell you. I have taken the kids on the Freedom Ride up to Niagara Falls, Harriet Tubman's place. So again, I've been drafted in. Fringe, and if that's a word, on the outside inside.
My name is Stephanie Janis. Like Kenny here, through osmosis, I here because of my partner, Cardwell. But I'll also share that I am a movement lawyer or human rights attorney at the Center for Constitutional Rights. And the center was founded because there was a group of attorneys that went down to Mississippi to protect and defend Fannie Lou and Ella Baker. They represented them in court. So part of the work that I do and part of who I am and knowing who I am and why I'm here is because of the work of Freedom School folks and Ella Baker. So even though it wasn't directly related, I've always felt connected to it, and so happy to learn and support from them.
That's right.
In our babyhood.
Ladera Suladen, I joined Freedom School as a high school junior in '99, worked at Germantown at Kelly, one of my first early mentors. Did a bunch of stuff in between, and I did much of this, and I sort of, I don't know.
What's the high school you do? You were Germantown.
High school.
We went to girls.
Did Germantown probably forever, did Mill Creek for a bit, was an academic advisor, did a bunch of things, and then went to college. Do you remember you set us down going to school and you had that like study is hard work conversation with us?
Yes.
You know, I need you to do that.
Anderson Hall. Tell me.
I need you to do that.
Oh my God. With Erica, that was
Yeah. So yeah, sort of faded out of Freedom School 7 years ago. A while ago, but always like held on to like the mentorship piece and just sort of kept in touch with a lot of the young people who are like the grown folks who I just saw coming up with the program.
I'm Crystal Sparrow. I was an academic advisor for 2006 to 2008, I believe. Some folks who agree that I used to be an academic advisor for and I was school president.
Coloma Cardwell. I joined Freedom School in 1999. Was there through 2001. Junior servant leader, also at Germantown. So for me, this is truly like being around family for the first time in 20-something years.
The high school.
High school, Central High School.
What's your number?
What
What class?
261.
Not 247, but it's.
See these bourgeois niggas start talking about numbers. He knows what I'm talking about. He knows what I'm talking about.
They know too.
What was his number?
Central didn't introduce me to Gil Skyhart. That was Dr.
There you
Carr.
go, man.
Or The Debt. I remember reading The Debt one year. Remember reading Radical Equations. A bunch of other stuff. I mean, Freedom School really just set my soul on fire in a way that's has never gone out. So I'm just thankful for all of you for starting it and then keeping it going, and so much I could say, but I'll leave it there.
And what you been doing since, man?
So Stephanie and I met at Berkeley Law School, now practicing law in New York, and we're going to get into it, but I was telling Sister Kelly that the next 60 years can't look like the last 60 years. So in a very serious way, we're going to try to deal with some of the power imbalances, certainly the racial nightmare that's been following us in this country and around the world for too long.
Hello, my name is Natalie Vines. I am a current student at Washington University, and I started my freedom school journey back in 2012, 2013. I was attending the after school program with my friends, Chloe and others, and eventually Brother Aaron became my AA at the site, and then preschool had like that break period, and then last year I returned as a SOI, which is a service like an intern at Sankofa Academy, and I've been working with level ones, which are kindergartners, K-2, and currently like the whole preschool movement has been helping me develop myself in my career, because I've always been a helper type person, and just futurely I want to develop my own aftercare facility for kids, so I've been using like the preschool connections to like continue to personally develop me and my friendships along the way, and preschool has been like a very great outlet for me, and a very great developmental piece, and like a family outside of the family that you didn't have. You have the freedom school family, and there's certain times and moments where like I reflect back onto like my first family training with Dr. Carr, and it was like probably like a 3-4 hour session. I just like it was really long, but I was just like fascinated and very enthusiastic about like all the wisdom and knowledge that you like shared on us, and like I just kept in contact with like that idea. Like I was also a product of Harambe Institute, so from that, like I just kept finding myself in these different programs inside Philadelphia in general, and like a lot of them kept losing funding just because of like the budget deficit inside the public school system. So I'm just happy to be a trainer this year with the rebirth of for freedom schools, and just hoping to like get it back to what it used to be and better. So
Thank you. Harambe.
Hello everyone, my name is Chloe Boer. I currently attend Lincoln University, the first degree granting HBCU.
Yes.
It is. I had to put that out there. So I started freedom school at Drew in 2008, and then after that, I was at Drew for 2 years. I went to Comagese. I went to Lee, and then I was a scholar. Then I became JSL, and then I became.
Overall, that's scholar.
Yes. Then I became a JSL at Huey for 2 years, and then there was a break, and then I became an SLI at Sankofa Freedom Academy. And this year, I was honored and picked to be a William Still trainer. I'm just gonna say that Philadelphia Freedom School has really shaped me to be the person that I am today. A lot of the people that when you have people teaching you, they don't think that you're really looking at them, but you really are. A lot of my mentors and stuff like that, they went to college, and was like, I'm gonna do that. A lot of people in Philadelphia Freedom Schools, I was a bad child, and I will always get in trouble. I mean, I was a horrible child, but I always get in trouble, and they was always telling me, you gotta stop, because you know you're gonna be better than that. You're gonna be great. So like Philadelphia Freedom Schools has really instilled a lot in me, and a lot of things was, they always said the reward for good work is more work. And I'm never late because I know Brother Boone used to send us home and we wouldn't get paid. So like it's so true. So a lot of Philadelphia Freedom School has shaped me just to be the person that I am today, and the person that I want to be in the future, which is to start a self-help shelter and to make multiple businesses that employ people with felonies and helping them get their college degrees, and also either get their GEDs or help women get their high school diplomas, and help people, retrieve their children from the system and learning how to really develop their relationship.
My name is Nicole Webster. I'm not really a part of the Freedom School
Oh,
technically.
yes, you are. Y'all about to learn something. Go
I kind of am. 1999 in the school district of Philadelphia. working out of the Office of Education for Employment. I was a placement specialist who was responsible for coordinating efforts between internship sites and high school students and college readiness and all things in between to help students decide what they would do once they graduated from high school. And my site at the time was Alvin High School, which was rich with social events. Every week. But I remained a steward in Philadelphia School District, and I'm now at Community College Philadelphia. I've been there for 13, 14 years now. Where I'm a full-time staff administrator.
Just finished your doctorate.
Yes, thank you.
Hi all, my name is Dr. Julia Archer. Nicole and I both started off our journey in the school district together, and that's how we met Dr. Carr with our mentor, Dr. Cassandra Jones. I was in the Ben Franklin Auden Reed cluster, doing the same things as Nicole did. Currently, right now, I'm the principal and founder of Education Services for All, which is a business that provides support for charter schools for special education, as well as the executive director for Inclusive Services for All, a nonprofit that supports students with intellectual disabilities and those that are in foster care transitioning out to help support education, employment, and housing. So that's what I am.
Hello everyone, my name is Isra Bellahab. I started off at St. Copa for my 9th to 12th grade year, and I graduated from 2015. And then I did film school last year with Brother Isaiah and Brother Marvin as a SLI. I also was a Eugene trainer under Sister Dr. Kelly and helped recruit the new 9th grade into St. Copa, teaching them about the traditions. I could definitely say Freedom School helped me get out of my little shell, because Brother Isaiah and Sister Kelly can both vouch I was never an outspoken person, and it helped me get out of that shell and break through. And so
Excellent. So I'll say mine. Greg Carr from Nashville, Tennessee, and I came to Philadelphia in 1992 to go to Temple, and for my doctorate, went to Tennessee State, HBCU in Nashville, and law school at Ohio State, and then did academic studies at Ohio State primarily because of the influence of that generation of scholars and activists who did that kind of African-centered work. In fact, the saying that the reward for good work is more work was given to me mouth to ear from Jacob Carruthers, one of the great African-centered scholars, who was taught, which is where I suspect he got it from. He didn't get it from his father, from a brother by the name of James Farmer Sr. Y'all saw the movie The Great Debaters. That's the figure that Forrest Whitaker played in The Great Debaters. Who did used to say, we do what we have to do, so we do what we want to do. So a lot of those sayings like that Farmer gave them, and so Carruthers was his student at Wiley College, of course. But came here to go to graduate school. Not as brave as Loman stepping practice law. I said, I'm gonna go teach. And so I came here because it's the only place in the country to get a PhD in African Studies. And not wanting to be disconnected from the city of Philadelphia or from the community, I used to teach one day a week African American history right down the street at a place that is no longer there. Just like some of these other places, the people are naming in the circle that are no longer physically there, which is why it's responsible. We have to tell this story now. This is why it's so important. But the place that's no longer there, where I used to go down once a week, which was walking distance from Temple, was William Penn High School. And in South Florida, had a little cluster called Masterminds. And the sister who was the deputy director at the time became the director, was Aisha Imani. So I used to go down there and work with her and her students. And so we'll talk more about how this all comes together, but a couple of years after I graduated, actually the year I graduated, 1998, I started working for the School District of Philadelphia, and started working for Cassandra Jones, Cassandra Watson Jones, who among many of her previous lives, before she was recruited to come, as you said, Kelly, central office downtown, they say. She, at another place that's no longer there, it's like a big shiny tower that Children's Hospital is built over there on the bank, near where they're going to give offers to Oshun tomorrow at Odunde. I'm like, boy, these white folks don't miss a trick. But that used to be the building where we worked. 734 Schuylkill Avenue, which belonged to the school district. But in fact, the school district doesn't own anything downtown. They even got rid of the school district building, which is a crime that they will never be able to explain. That building was built for public education. It's now condos, parks, whatever it is, dog parks, or whatever it is. But at any rate, Dr. Jones was second in command at a unit called the Office of Education for Employment, as we said, and Mary Jane Clancy, sure did. Never sacrifice your own. Mary Jane Clancy. We were in a meeting one time, they were talking about programs for school children, and my question always was, well, y'all got these fancy ideas, and your kids go to public schools. And never forget, Mary Jane said, never sacrifice your own. So anyway, okay, so this is for other people's children, very nice. So yes, Mary Jane Clancy was the person whose name on the paperwork, Cassandra Jones ran that office. And when the school district expanded, because that used to be, that building was where they did vocational education. And voc ed was out of favor. You can't call it voc ed anymore because that sounds too much like shop and you don't want the kids to go to college. So they transformed it and used dollars from the federal government, state government, to create this Office of Education for Employment to get students to do whatever they wanted to do after they graduated from high school, what they would call post-secondary, their post-secondary degrees. And there were a lot of different people they put in that office because it was a made-up office. So they had partnerships with.
Whose administration is this under?
This was under David Hornbeck.
No, I'm talking about mayor.
Oh, the mayor became John Street. Who was before Street?
Rendell.
Ed Rendell, because he went to the governor's office.
Okay. So this is primarily under Rendell's administration?
Street.
It's primarily under
Street. John Street. Get out of here. Remember that? Remember that commercial when they were trying to stop John Street from winning? They had John Street for mayor, and there was a black screen that said John Street, and you see the grainy video of him and his brother fighting white people. Like, get out of here! And then it says for mayor, and then question mark. Get out of here! You had the big afro. Was that the fight they got in the city council?
I think it was on council floor.
Yeah, it was on council floor. They was beefing with these white councilmen there. So the whole idea is we got to stop this black guy from being the mayor. That's right. 1999. That's right. That's right. That's right. So yeah, it was under street administration. That's right.
Because I was on this campaign.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. This is why the history is so important. You know what I'm saying?
I was like, vote for street.
Yeah. So I mean, that's crazy.
We beat the street.
Beat the street. That's right. Because they had to keep Milton kind of in check. Milton was what they were worried about. John White ran for mayor. They were all running for mayor. I remember that. That's right, because the school district used to come to school. And of course, Sharif was a kid. That was long before state senator. That was before he even had locks. He was still elementary school, maybe middle school. Yeah, that may have been just that, or before he was going to high school. So at any rate, that in '99, then David Hornbeck was superintendent of schools. And I won't belabor this. This is history we can talk about because I know this is the beginning. We need to do a lot more of this. But in that unit that they created, there were a lot of things happening. And the fiscal agent, which was not part of the school district, but it was their pass-through so they could manage a lot of this money they were getting, was a unit called Communities and Schools Philadelphia. And they were on the floor underneath us. I think we were on the top floor, maybe the 6th floor. CIS. And that's why it came from CIS. And that's why the money came from CIS instead of the school district, because what that's what, PYN. They created, I was in the meetings when we created PYN. And with a guy who still works for the school district, I think, what's Mike's last name? Tall white boy with bald-headed. He wrote, we all got together and wrote the first grant for a program that shot the top floated to the feds. Yep. And we got something called Gaining Early Awareness, undergrad called GEAR. That's it. How the GEAR came from. You know that became a national law? Yes. It was a national law, right? No, we wrote that grant.
So when Shock is running to try to keep his congressional seat. Like, that's the primary thing he's campaigning on, is
No
the
question.
fact that he sent all these kids to college
No
and becomes a
question.
national program under that model.
That's right. We wrote that grant right on the 6th floor of the school. That's right. Yeah. So I mean, that's what Freedom School is really connected to so much of the history, not only of education in Philadelphia, but in the country. Philadelphia Freedom Schools, beyond. So yeah, Mike's been costly. Anyway, because that's all he did was write grants. He sit up there, he's sitting around. Yeah, that's what he did. So they also housed the Office of Service Learning, because they had y'all doing service learning too. Remember that? So at that time, school districts was organized around clusters. That's why Freedom Schools ended up with 21 or 22. Because David Hornbeck, who was superintendent of schools, and also at the same time the chairman of the board of the Children's Defense Fund, he said we're going to have a Freedom School in every cluster. Prior to that, the Children's Defense Fund Freedom Schools, the restarted Freedom Schools that you just heard Dr. Kelly talk about, was coming out of the Children's Defense Fund, and they're very expensive, as we know. That's one reason we're here in this circle, right? We're raising money. At that time, I want to say the number that I remember is $80,000 for Freedom School, because you didn't do a Freedom School with less than 100 students. Scholars, like some of y'all work, which is crazy. Because you're the only people I'm aware of in the country, in terms of Philadelphia Freedom Schools, it's the only place I'm aware of where you have people who went from scholars to everything in the Freedom Schools movement, including national trainers. There was a time in CDF when over half the elementary trainers, like Mount Kelly was a trainer. Still?
Yeah, so Sister Rashida.
They're down there now. I guess they'll be coming back tomorrow if they do it normally. Right? Because I mean, normally national training, Children's Defense Fund is right around now, and everybody try to get flights to come back in time to catch your doom day because they be coming back in on Sunday. So the Philadelphia trainers, and there was a time even when we got put out, well, when we had our war with them, you know, they still wanted our people to be trainers because they had, only y'all have been scholars, junior servant leaders, servant leaders, have done every site, you know, project, direct site coordinators, and it's, okay, we want them because they know everything about the movement. So at any rate, that first year, Hornbeck said we'll have, I think it was seven. And he just decreed it. He was the superintendent of schools. But in order to get it passed, whatever the, I guess it was the school board at that point. The Pedro, what's his name? Ramos was the chick. He came in, I remember. Is that what he is now? Crazy. Ramos was the, whoever it was before him and then him, because we used to go down to his office. We had to sit, we used to be on the first floor of 21st Street. He'd go in there, he'd be sitting there with his, you know, in his white shirt, looking back. What are we gonna do? So, okay, and his brother involved in some of this. Anyway, this whole thing. So we were able to get the money. These things are expensive. The Children's Defense Fund Freedom Schools before Philadelphia got involved were primarily based at churches. Because some of these churches could write the check. Or they were community-based organizations who were either well-funded, who had savvy CEOs and people who would write grants, or both, like the Friends Neighborhood Guild and Women's Christian Organizations. So those two freedom schools in Philadelphia, as you heard Kelly talk about, predated Philadelphia Freedom Schools. They were here. So we had expertise. And of course, that's why the whole joke in Freedom School was everything ran through the Guild. At some point, the Guild is like the founding cradle. Everything kind of, including Erica. But the whole process meant then that Hornbeck had to sell the school district on this being something other than a fun thing for kids to do in the summertime. So the sell was it would improve student learning for young children, the scholars. And as you all know, we know, when we say, oh wait, no, you gotta introduce yourself. Come on, let me pause right here, because I was messed up.
Okay.
No, that's why he went to sleep so you could do that.
Hello everyone, I'm Kamali Johnson. I started Philadelphia Freedom School as a JSL in 2005 when I was 14. I started out at the Friends Neighborhood Guild. I've been at Frankfurt, I've been at Clemente, Potter Thomas, Fairview for a couple of weeks. I've also been a family gamer trainer and Williamsville trainer. I currently do logistics for our training this year, and I work at Stanco for Freedom Academy Charter School. Teach first grade.
Who's that on your show?
And this is Kayla, and this is my son.
Thank you. Perfect. That was perfect. So yeah, we got the money. We were looking for partners. community-based organizations. So obviously the Guild, the WCA. And then we had to find some more partners. So we found them. Mr. B, what was that CEO that he had?
Say it.
What Mr. B had, what was the
At first, it was the mayor's office of
That's right.
something.
That's right.
First, it was the mayor, Mox.
Mox.
So first it was Mox, and then it switched to Frankfurt Neighborhood Community Center, and then eventually it went under Carson Valley Children's City.
An amazing moment, because that's why Sankofa Freedom Academy is in the Franklin section of Philadelphia. Because when we sat to figure out how we could get a K-12 freedom school, that was the easiest place to put it, because that was the place, and of course Mr. Blackburn and that crew, you know, literally walked the streets of Frankfurt to get that community together to do that work. So, place she graduated from was a dream we had all the time. So when we think about freedom schools generally, it went from 7, it maxed out, I guess it was 22. Yeah. Because the clusters, and that's why when we hear the conversation, and we tie this together, each cluster had a cluster leader. That's what they call a cluster leader. I don't know what they are now, regional superintendents. Is that how they do it? They went back to that, because they used to have them, then they abolished that. Hornbeck came along and said, no, we got to decentralize leadership. People should be coming downtown. You should stay in the neighborhoods. So the neighborhood high school, the feeder, junior high or middle schools, the feeder, elementary schools was the cluster. Franklin cluster, Story Management cluster. Cook cluster. All the clusters. That's exactly right, all the clusters. Cassandra and EFE were able to put in the cluster somebody from our office was in each cluster, 2 people. Post-secondary readiness people. These were the folks who, Joe Nicholson was a story manager, Ruben Mills was there, Audrey, Jack Green. Now this is going to become important in about 60 seconds. Why? Because these are folks who were recruited from the corporate world, from education. They have been seasoned in a lot of places. They came to work for the school district to go out there and create these models for post-secondary success. You're going to go to school, you're not going to go to school, this kind of thing. But in order to connect these people, who were probably, I guess, in that time in their 40s, maybe 50s at the oldest, but most of them in their 40s, 30s, 40s. To do the footwork, they recruited these young people who were either just out of college or whatever, to do all this burdensome task of actually dealing with these teenagers, and they were called the placement specialists. And this too, right? You know what I'm saying? This is why, so some of y'all, Kaloma, and I'm thinking, some of y'all 99, Nadira, Isaiah, some of y'all got recruited by these people, right? To be in the first cohort of preachers. Either your name got recommended by a principal or somebody in the building. Kevin White, we all know Kevin, that was Ruben Mills. No, that was Dana King. Dana King was teaching at Ben Franklin High School. You know what I'm saying? Exactly, this is what I'm saying. So if you want to know how you got picked to be in, because y'all had to fill out applications. Remember that you had to get a letter of recommendation, all that stuff. They had to gather all that paperwork.
On the third floor, motivation in Ben Franklin High School. That's
exactly right. So now, mind you, I want to pause you here just for a second. I know we got time. I just want to say that this has never been told in this way. So this is why we have to do this history. Because I don't know, y'all never been in a circle that even talk about it. I've seen y'all before. But now you know what you're saying.
Yes. We just got an application. We had no idea of the work.
Well, now you get that. You say that. Yeah, I mean that's it. Because what happened was all those files were on the 3rd floor or 6th floor of a building that no longer existed. When they bulldozed it to the ground and destroyed. This is why the oral history is going to have to fill in. Because by the time I was at Howard, and I was like, don't let them know. What do they do? And they do, wait, what? You don't throw away your files. Right. Which is what brings me to, there are names that probably a lot of us remember. Kenny Holtzman, for example. Philadelphia Freedom Schools was in the portfolio, not of Cassandra Jones, but of Kenny Holtzman, who was the director of service learning for the school district of Philadelphia. Kenny did an incredible job. He did the best job to his ability. His mother was actually a guidance counselor at Simon Gratz. And I'll never forget, Dr. Jones called me in her office. Remember, she had that glass office right there. And I used to sit right outside, and she called me and said, listen, there's this thing called Freedom School. They needed something called Old McDonald's Farm or something. She talking about Haley Farm in Tennessee. I said, Old McDonald's Farm? He said, listen, Hornbeck is sending Kenny to this farm He can't go by himself. Can you go to this farm with Kenny? You know, this is literally how it happened. I was like, what? Cause what? She said, yeah, they gotta. He's going down there in 2 weeks. What? Yeah, we'll pay for it. What? So I started doing a little research, and that's when I found out about something called the Black Community Crusade for Children, BCCC. And they dropped the B. That's a whole nother history, right? Because it's really what I'm going to get to, and we had this conversation, is the tension that lies at the heart of the Freedom School movement. And Philadelphia is probably responsible for a lot of it, and proud to say it.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So when we went down there, me and Kenny, we went down there. He was fired up because Hornbeck said we're going to do this, and they couldn't stop Hornbeck because he had the money. And he was the chair of the CDL board, which means him and Miss Elliman was like this. They was scheming on getting this money. To pay $80,000 for a freedom school, mean there was only one in St. Louis. They had money at a place in New York, I guess Jeffrey Campus. He had money, Harlem Children's Home. But most of these were church schools. Then out of the sky drops Philadelphia with 7 times the number of freedom schools that anybody else had anywhere in the country. And then said, oh, we'll be 14 next year. Oh yeah, 22. Whoa. I mean, so they didn't, you know, and here's the check. But it wasn't religious. There's too many Muslims in Philadelphia. First of all, anyway, so we was like, you know, we can't run with the Christ. I mean, we know y'all say non-secular, but we came down to the farm and I see St. Thomas, Prince Francis of Assisi over here in the corner, you know, Lord, my Holy Small. I get all that. But what I don't see is when the sun come up, you're going to see some kids from Philadelphia do something you probably never see on this farm. And it's okay though. You know what I'm saying?
I think we started the traditional libations on the farm.
Oh no, that's exactly what happened during the wars then, because, hey, let me go. That's a whole nother story, because what ended up happening is the Philadelphia students who would go for training because they were part of Philadelphia Freedom School would do libation before something inside so strong, Harambe, and eventually the other sites around the country figured out if they had rogue Africans in their circles, they could meet the Philadelphia kids before anything else started. And of course, CDFs, don't worry, we didn't start yet, it's time for Harambe, not yet. Okay, let's get in the circle. I said, wait a minute, what's going on? So, and that became, what that revealed was, of course, there's a freedom school, CDF history, before Philadelphia Freedom Schools. And what we eventually found out, of course, which we learned in part because of Erica, but not just Erica, was that there had already been a couple of attempts to control that energy. There was a crew from the West Coast, from Berkeley. Some of y'all may remember we went to Chain, and Erica called her friends from the West Coast. Them girls had been put out of freedom school before we got there. In other words, so there's always been a tension. This is the challenge. Anyway, I said, we'll talk about that. We'll have to talk about it another time. But anyway, because I'm gonna wind this up, because really there's a question I want to ask, and we had this conversation. So let me edit myself right now and say that it costs a lot of money to go to Tennessee, where they had the training. They had never trained high school students. So y'all know, because we got level 1, 2, 3, 4. What's level 4 in Philadelphia?
Well, for us, it's 8th grade.
Exactly.
But for CDF, that's high school.
That's exactly right, because they never have level 4 students at CDF Freedom Schools, because those young people can go to work. So the first thing we immediately, me and Kenny recognized sitting there in February '99 was, we can't do level 4. Our level 4 kids are going to be working as junior servant leaders. We're going to pay them. So they're not going to be sitting in the classroom as students. They're going to be in there as teaching assistants. And in order to get the money, Hornbeck had to say, well, we're going to give them something to do to earn a high school credit. Some of y'all remember y'all had to get their credit. And then it became redundant for the ones who were sophomores and juniors, because you already earned your credit. And that's where 2 things came in. We needed certified teachers to give the credit. That's where the teachers came in, the AAs, academic advisors. And we're paying them, so we're going to create a curriculum just for them. And that's where the JSL curriculum came in. Every year except the first year. The first year, because we had just got brought in, they gave us this book, Forged by Fire, Sharon Draper, yeah, you know, 3-year-old read that, right? And I got it, I'm like, what the hell are we going to do with this? So this is for your level 4. No, and that second year is when we picked the debt.
It got real.
You will never, and that's when we start, you will never pick another book for Philadelphia. This book starts with the boy saying fire to the no. And they ran it in a week, y'all ran it in a week. The PSRCs and the PSmen, we met one time with Wanamaker, I did a community walk around, remember you had disposable cameras, you had to go around the neighborhood, look at stuff like, you know what I'm saying? You remember that, right? I'm sorry, brother. 20 years later, I'm sorry. No, because we didn't make it. Y'all was scrambling. They was scrambling to make something up because we didn't. But then next year, we fixed all that.
Yeah, the author came.
Yeah, Randall Robinson, which had never, there was no model. CDF Freedom School had no model for what we were trying to do. And so anyway, to kind of advance this along very quickly, and I'll tell you, we can talk another time about how that curriculum really emerged. That's a really good story. What you saw was the next year we went to 14, next year we went to 20. We always had freedom schools because they were in all the clusters. The whole city of Philadelphia was represented. So we had what was South Philly? Audrey, but no, Asian Americans United was the community-based organization. Who was AAU with? That wasn't quite Audrey. We were over near Bach. Was it Bach cluster?
I'm not sure.
Colombo, Fells. But anyway, that site, they had to find trilingual books.
Wow.
Spanish, Mandarin, and English. Because we had Asian kids. And even Mandarin don't cover all the Asian kids, but it was Asian Americans United and in fact, some of those kids were the ones who suggested the social action theme for that year, which was no baseball stadium in Chinatown. That was the movement. You know what I'm saying? Remember that? And we all bet, and he's like, no baseball stadium. And all the city people came. We were at Temple. We had the end of the year was crazy. That's why we always had Congresso. So, we got the Latino community. Everybody was always at the table. One of the big freedom school fights we had at Temple during the JSL meeting when they started arguing about where did people hide their money. Were you in there?
Yeah.
What?
Right.
Besida and who was the other sister's name? Oh, they were hot. It was beef though. All I remember was we were over in Glenfelter and they were like, they over there arguing, what's going on? How did it even start, Nadir?
Something about some particular group keeps their money in the mattress.
Asians, right? You're right.
Studied about this group.
Latinos put it this way.
Leave us alone.
Yeah, but what it revealed, of course, because these young people are working together and don't have a filter, is these inter-ethnic tensions, and nobody trusts the bank. The Asians don't trust the bank, Latinos don't trust the bank, but of course, black people come off like, well, y'all had, and then, but everybody was in the room, and it turned into a difficult conversation, but nobody left the circle, even though it was tough. But nobody trying to do that. Really? And of course, anyway, so after a few years, after that first year, maybe I'll stop here, because then we can talk about this forever, like you said, Kelly. After the first year, the organizations in Philadelphia said, we don't like the school district taking the money and giving us this money, but they also want to tell us what to do. We've been in existence a long time. Of course, FNG and Women Christian Alliance, we would take it, we want the money, but we don't want you. So we created two positions. One was somebody to coordinate the academic advisors, and that was Aisha, because she was a long-time educator. She knew she run programs for years. So we can get Aisha. We had to say, well, you court, she said, I'll do that. And then we picked from the guild Erica Woods, who had worked with CDF. And of course, not realizing that then is what poisoned her and then Kelly and then everybody else with CDF, because these were CDF folks from CDF Freedom Schools, but now they were Philadelphia Freedom Schools. So Erica Woods became the Freedom School coordinator, the liaison. The pass-through was community schools. And that's why we never had a separate entity. Because to have a separate entity would require creating something that wouldn't be able to navigate the school district apparatus the way CIS was able to. So Martin was, even though Martin looked like he was disagreeing with stuff all the time and gave y'all hell a lot of times, at the end of the day, he could never walk away from the table, because if he got too husky, Cassandra would be like, Martin, and then it'd be like, so even though we would see okay, rah, come here. We giving you the money. And don't forget, Steve, what's the boy's name? The budget guy. No. They was barking, but because behind them was always Cassandra and Joe. You're not gonna mess this up. Because from the beginning, the CBOs wanted the independence. And I was with it, but I also understood that as long as we can ride this train, we should ride this train and get this money. We got to 22, and then of course, the thing began to fall. Rendell was governor, Street was still mayor, Hornbeck was party to the city. He left, and part of the reason he left was because Philadelphia had sued the state. And on racial equity grounds, Title VI, all this stuff, I mean, you see, y'all, and they had the state over fire. And Rendell leaned on Street and them to back off the state on this educational equity issue because you're gonna get millions of dollars. And David Hornbeck said, I'm not backing off. We got them. We're getting ready to get this money for racial equity. John Street, Ed Rendell, no, we're gonna make a truce. And over the truce, that's when Hornbeck said, I can't do this. And when he walked away, that began the dismantling of the Philadelphia controlled school district. And it doesn't mean he was a great guy on everything, but on that race thing, and then he was serious about, we got to do this. And of course, we know what happened after that. Rendell reneged, John Street, Shane moved his office into the school district building to protest. Nah, dude, y'all made this deal. So Freedom School began to lose funding, and as we lose funding, they had to get more creative, and we carried it for a long time. And we're sitting in this circle because y'all have continued it. So the question I raised, and I'm aware that it's now 1:15, but we can stay a little bit longer. How do you create a space that you control completely? Because our job, we used to say it all the time, our job in freedom school is eventually get to the point where you drop freedom off and it becomes school. You can call where you go in the daytime slavery school or something. But why we gotta call this freedom school? Because all the scholars, all the GSLs, we always say, we don't want to go back to school. Why can't school be like this? That's the question you gotta ask. But we couldn't, eventually we broke with CDF because after Erica, was that Cedric?
Yes. Well, I mean, it was me by myself for a while, and then
after Erica was you.
After Erica was me, and then we brought on Cedric because it was behemoth, and we just needed more support.
So what happened? Of course, Erica Woods, who was an elevator trainer, she got retired. In a beautiful ceremony. Exactly. On the farm when they gave her a coach bag. Y'all gave her a coach bag. So she's the coach. But the politics behind it, of course, they try to control Philadelphia.
That's right.
Because Philadelphia has now written a complete curriculum for its high school students that's straight African centered, but inclusive of the African world and everybody else. You speak English, you speak Spanish, don't matter. But it's going to be anchored in our thing. And it was filtering into the classrooms. And the college students were like, well, you pull these JSLs out once a week, so why can we get, okay, well, we're going to pull y'all in. Now it's infecting CDF. And of course, when did you get retired? The following year?
So, 2001.
So Erica must have been right after before that. They gave you a jersey.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we would go, and the other thing is that CDF would bring, in addition to the Philadelphia trainers, the Ella Baker trainers, and of course, we thank Mom Dr. Kelly for the vision to create first Fannie Hamer trainers, and then the William Still trainers. And of course, Fannie Hamer then balances out, continues Ella Baker, and then William Still brought it right back to this neighborhood. She lived right down the street. So now Philadelphia has trainers. You know what I'm saying? Which means, where's your loyalty? Something inside so strong. So they retired Kelly. So we going down to the Forum for National Training, watching them try to manage Philadelphia by excising out the rebels. So we started calling ourselves the Maroon Freedom Schools because we were still in at that point. We crossed the line because the year they retired you, I think Cedric was in charge of, what was his title? Is he director of national training or?
I know.
No, that was
Cedric was a coordinator.
Okay.
He was a coordinator. I was a trainer. I think you were a trainer too.
That's right. That's right.
Cedric was a coordinator. It was him and another sister, and they would work under Doc and
Nick Bass.
Oh, Nick
Classy Nick Bass. Morehouse. That's right. That's right. My God. And Adrian, you remember Adrian? He did that in Louisiana. Yep.
Wally,
right?
And Taj Brown.
Taj, that's right. These are all children of defensive law people. So Cedric, I don't know whether they fired him or he quit.
They fired him.
They fired Cedric
Sorry.
and we hired him.
And we hired him.
At which point CDF was like, that's it. We called it the Valentine's Day Massacre.
Yeah.
It was February 14th when Children's Defense Fund sent a threat to Philadelphia children, to CISP, and said, y'all gotta stop using the Freedom School name. And of course, now, I ain't like it, I never practiced, but I ain't forget what I learned.
No, they did something a little shicier than that. What they said was, they said, you can either disband, right? Each organization deal with us directly, or you're not welcome.
You're not
and
welcome.
It was like, it was deep because we didn't, and quite honestly, when we went into the meeting, for the most part, we knew which organizations were going to say, oh, of course not.
Oh, that's right.
But some organizations, we didn't know. We didn't know. Some organizations would be like, no, forget that. We want to go with CDF. But it was unanimous. Everybody said, like, we are going to stay together. This is more.
This was their finest hour. These are the CBOs. That's
than,
right.
you know, having, you know, going to the national training and all those kinds of things. We have what it takes. And at the time, we had so many veterans. We had so many folks that were just like, we have what the know-how to make this happen.
We do it ourselves.
Absolutely.
And that's right, because we were drafting language like SOAS.
Yeah.
You have no copyright there, and that's why you see on all their stuff, it says CDF Freedom School. They could not copy, they could not trademark Freedom School. And that's why we're Philadelphia Freedom School. Cedric's wife, Monique, designed the logos. Because we needed our own stuff now. We needed our own colors, we needed our own brand. That house thing is cool, but now we so far beyond that little house that we want something that's gonna say Freedom School, right? And so there was supposed to be one logo. That was Jehudi. But I ain't mad at Maisha and them. Some kind of way they got that tree into the conversation, which is cool. But the line was drawn, now for the JSLs, it's gonna be Jehudi. Because at the center of our work is intellectual work, reading and writing. That's why the JSL logo is Jehudi, and the Freedom School's logo is the tree. And that's why there are no colors in the boy and girl, as we know. Y'all, how many times have y'all gone through training? You're gonna do it again, explain it. Why are the children no color? To put yourself in there in that blue circle. But the girl got Afro puffs. Let you know. I mean, in other words, it's not, you know, but there's no color, right? They're blue, it's Monique, all that stuff. That was our stuff. And then we had our own thing. And so, you know, I'll stop with that. Well, let me say one more thing. I know we can keep going, but let me stop. Let me say this. Cedric and Monique, of course, Monique's fiance, they eventually got married. They got married in Mother Emanuel Church. We went. I want to say we met. They got divorced, but when they got married, we went. Kelly, Aisha went to the wedding.
Yeah.
Did Pitney officiate?
No. Oh, what's that?
Yes, I think that was him. Yes. You know the brother Pitney who got killed. Dylan Rock went up there and killed those people at Mother Emanuel AME in Charleston, South Carolina. That's where Cedric and Monique got married. Poor libation. Yeah. That was him. That married them, I believe. Yeah, that is crazy. I mean, so in terms of freedom schools, it's really like, yeah. So let me stop here. Can we do this? I think we can do it, but what does it look like to have your own space? Because that's the thing you'll have to fight for.
I don't really know how, it's just like, I understand systems on a macro level, like I can look at it from, but I don't know the intricacies. And as I'm listening to, and I was around for that, because I'm in Kelly's system a lot. And so as she was going through all this like drama, we were roommates during a lot of that early stuff. And so she would tell me like the new updates and like, and it was almost like theater.
You tweeted through a burner account, did you?
Huh?
That was before Twitter. Freedom School predates YouTube, Twitter, Snapchat. It wasn't that. No, that we be in jail, brother. That would have been real. Oh my God, I'm so glad that wasn't.
Yeah, but I think the number one thing that throughout the entire oratory of y'all telling the history is that when you are beholden to or partnering with white systems of oppression to create your freedom framework, yeah, it might grow, but it's also subject to when their wins.
That's right.
And so there is no. And it was like, being in part of Freedom School, I've been a part of lots of different things. And it was so like, at the height, it was like so impressive and so wonderful. But the resources being used came from places where you would never be able to control it because it's stolen goods. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of like, it's this weird thing where when your oppressor has control over the purse strings, you know, you're all beholden to that, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so you have to figure out a way to be independent of that. But what the oppressor also has is systems. So the systems in place, like the school district is school district. You can't replace their schools with freedom school, you know, like turn freedom school into school because they have control over it. So in this society, the only thing, like, you have to think about being smaller and controlled, smaller almost clusters and control, as opposed to we have this big thing, this big impressive thing that's dope as hell, but it's also sad. I don't know.
That's good.
I've been out free for a while.
Right, he dropped the F-bomb. Good. I'm just in this space. Come on, man.
You know how many times Walt Disney called people nigga? In his very room.
But yeah,
this is a song in the South.
I don't want to go too long, but just this idea of, like, I think about what this is, like what America is, and it is this behemoth, and it has its weaknesses, but one of its strengths is once you kind of feel like you've contained one system, another system steps in its place to stop your progress. So this growth happened for a certain amount of years, and then it like was dismantled because one guy left, and these people sold out Philly and all this kind of stuff.
But you know what our jump off was though? I remember after one Wednesday session, we were at University City where we went over to Khalila's house, Khalila Ames.
Oh yeah, that's right.
To start plotting for Sankofa. Right? So
Yeah.
that Sankofa is supposed to be the space.
Yeah.
That's why I say.
But again, these are still tied to
And what you're saying is so key.
No, you're right.
Because
It is
we
still
have
tied.
watched, so in the time we've been in existence,
That's right.
we're actually about to go into our 10th year. And so over
At
this
Sankofa.
10 year of Sankofa, in this 10th year, we have watched over the years all these African Center individual charter schools be put out of business. With some did have agreed, certain things that really weren't right. But some folks may have had, something out of space.
Right.
New media shit.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. There are several.
So you know who they brought in trying to rescue the media?
I know,
was
Kevin.
Ruben.
Kevin was up there too.
Yeah, because Ruben went over the
So I'll say the media did. I was working in the controller's office when they shut the media down. The media did what they were supposed to do as far as the recommendations from the SRC and their corrective action plan, and they still closed it. They would never have done that to a white school. So with that being said, I'm listening to what you're saying, and Dr. Carr, to answer your question, I believe that it sounds so simple, but it's so difficult to do. I believe the answer is political power. When you talked about what was going on with the school district, the first thing I asked you was who was the mayor at that time, and that's what my instincts meant, because the mayor is the person who's in charge of the school district who decides how those allocations are funded. When you think about Sankofa, right? Sankofa is open with a lot of sweat and tears and like that, all that stuff. But Tony Baden, being the state rep there at the time, gave it some political clout because he's the state rep and he had a great reputation at that time. And so I know that we view government as something that's not favorable to poor people and people of color, because it's not. And it hasn't been in the history of poor people and people of color, but government has never been the type of asset that we needed to be, but that's primarily because we've never controlled government. We've never been in charge of government. I know that a lot of people talk about Dr. King ideology, especially like towards the end of his life where he felt like, he led us into a burning building, right? But at the same time, he might have felt like he led us into his burning building, but his theory was never actually put into practice. We never have put ourselves in a position where we have any political power at all. And if you look at a lot of the institutions that oppress us, it starts with government and politics. If you look at the institution of mass incarceration, that's judges, that's laws, and that's lawmakers. If you look at most things that oppress us, it comes from government. But yet, and I completely empathize, I understand why we don't trust government, because the government has never done nothing for us. But at the same time, I don't think the masses are educated and informed to know what the role of government is and how government has a direct impact on how we live our life. And government is ours, right? If you look at the city of Philadelphia, you know, I know we feel like government isn't ours, but you know, the school district, those people are paid through taxpayer dollars. The people who put up the majority of the tax dollars in this constituency as far as this city is us, right? When you look at the 10-year tax abatement, I don't have a 10-year tax abatement. I pay my real estate tax, and I bet most of the other people in this circle do. Yeah. When it comes to shop for your groceries, that's what I'm saying. When it comes to shop for your groceries, you know, we don't go out and shop and hand and stuff like we get the brunt of that shoulder tax right here. So on one level, we say, you know, well, you know, government isn't ours, and we're not charging government. But at the same time, the biggest employer in the city of Philadelphia is the city of Philadelphia. It's not Comcast, it's not UPenn, it's the city of Philadelphia. And if you're the mayor of the city of Philadelphia, you're the CEO of the biggest company in the city, and you're in charge of more resources than anybody. And so I think the only way we could put ourselves in a position of having, I guess you could say, some level of financial stability is having some level of political power.
Yeah, but a lot of times, like being in the system of politics, it's not like you go in there and you change it. It changes you. And there's so many ways in which you have black people who are elected officials who drop the ball. Like, I mean, you know, this is one particular instance, but it's a big one. Like, you know, even as a Barack Obama is, you know, talking a good game about, you know, oppression and we have to deal with it, he's signing Blue Lives Matter bill. Like, black people, like, they will, once you get in, like, you might even go in with the idea, like, I'm going to make a change. No, the system, the system is going to be the thing that changes you. And, or the system is just going to stop you and just kind of deplete you from, or just get rid of you. Like, there's plenty of people
I think that's happened in the past, but.
Yeah, but I think that what you're saying is exactly it. So you have to think about the number of schools who do not teach young people how our democracy is supposed to function, and why voting matters. I keep looking at the shit. And why those things. I have my brother who is constantly saying, oh, it doesn't matter. And the thing I always bring back to him is, if voting didn't matter, why do they work so hard to ensure we don't do it?
That's true.
If voting didn't matter, why is it that if I am incarcerated and I serve my time and I come back out, it's that much harder for me to participate? So it absolutely matters. But when young people don't understand how this democracy is supposed to function, you get a half a year's credit of civil, what the heck is that called? In 12th grade?
Civil service or
civil something where you're supposed
civics,
to.
Civics
government. Civics, where you learn about how things, so how do you learn that in a half a school year?
It's a civics class.
Yeah, it's insane to me that that's what young
Oh
people
yeah, no,
learn.
it's still this. How many grades did you graduate?
Oh, yeah, have a school year. So if we want to have the power, then you have to, you gotta have that educational piece so that it's not the lone soul Barack Obama says I'm gonna make a change, but it's all of us understanding how that role gets played and what part we can play in it. And it doesn't have to be the one person who gets elected who's doing the work. It could be that the majority of us are doing that work.
Can I say this too?
Doesn't happen.
As far as doing it politically, a lot of people have their own agendas, and once you start trying to, somebody might not see your agenda, so they might not want to participate in the same vein or the same, with the same force that you would come with. So if you're talking about somebody who it doesn't look like it's going to directly benefit, how do you get them to say, align with me and we?
See,
the only way you can do that is
to your constituents, because the thing that one of the things that I think that is the most underrated thing is the power of your voice. And so one of the things that I've found where individuals, so in the school district that I work in, which is the suburban school district, I work in Lower Marion, and they say, oh, this is such a great district. Well, when I look at some of my colleagues, and I think about the colleagues that I work with in Philadelphia, I was like, oh my goodness, we would run circles around you.
How about that?
Because you're really not that great. I said, but what makes them better is that the individuals that pay the taxes are forcing them to make sure that they do the things that they're supposed to do. Not the things that they want them to do, but no, when my child is here for the 7 hours and 15 minutes, you're gonna make sure that you provide them with the best. Right, and I'm going to hold you to it. I'm coming to everything. I'm coming to those board meetings. I'm making sure that you do these things. And it's that voice. You're making sure that that school board makes sure that that superintendent and everyone else comes or where they're supposed to. The other thing is that we have to really, when I teach, because I teach at Lincoln, we have to teach individuals the system and let them understand that who is really in control, right? Every state is in control of governing their education system. So if you want to know why Massachusetts has a really great education, it's because the individuals in that state force and make sure that they do what they bring them to the ground and say, hey, this is what I want. So we have to make sure at the political, I voted you in, this is what I want. Right? This is what you're supposed to do for my constituents.
But see, the thing
is,
this is what I think we need to get away from.
You have to
right?
have knowledge.
We should not vote people in. We should pick our candidates. Right? So in Philadelphia right now, right, there you had 2016, Bernie Sanders lost. When Bernie Sanders loses, there's a look at her, she's heartbroken. Us older people, we know that Bernie Sanders, whatever. I only gotta talk about that. But what I do give Bernie Sanders credit for was he energized people to believe that they can do something that a lot of us believe can't be done because we've been around for some time, right? So that same energy that he gave people, mostly white folks, they take that energy and they organize in their neighborhoods, right? Now you got an organization in Philadelphia, Reclaim Philadelphia. They've been in existence for 2 years, since 2016, since Bernie Sanders lost the Democratic primary. They now have more political power than most black organizations in this show. Sure. You see what I'm saying? And what they did was they organized their community. They picked their candidates. They didn't say, well, look, you know, such and such is running, we want to support them. They said, look, no, Darian, you've been with us. You our girl. You gonna run for that seat, and we gonna make sure you win. Okay. So I think when I say we need to get involved in the political process, I'm not saying go vote for the person that's sitting there that's already running for office. I'm saying we need to go look at this thing. You need 303 state reps. We need 102 seats. Let's start with one. All right, boom. How many seats we need to win? How many votes we need to win this seat? Okay, let's organize and let's win this seat. And then once you win one, you win two. You win two, you win four. And then you look up, you have political power. It's a long game. If you look at the Republican Party, they've been doing it for some time. They have a blueprint as to, not one I will follow, but
what keeps them together? What keeps the Republicans together?
I think what keeps them together is the same thing that keeps Reclaim together, which is the same thing that could keep us together, is they all have the same light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. And where is it grounded?
For them? Oh, and nothing but evil. For them.
No, nothing to do with that. First of all, it's interesting to me you say that because I think probably agree. Political power, right? He said, seek ye first the political kingdom. The politics should be simple with that in mind. If you got the ground. What we thought we could do with Philadelphia Freedom Schools is disrupt the way our people look at themselves. Once that's disrupted, everything you say, everything we talking about becomes possible. But it has to be preceded with a disruption. It can't be a negotiated. It can't be a kind of what am I trying to say? It can't be a bridge. It has to be a complete and utter disruption. So let me say this very quickly because this was the thing that I think was so threatening about PFS. It still is. It's not either or. We absolutely have to have political power. But the reason politicians can be co-opted is because they don't have a worldview or a place to stand independent of the thing they become a part of. That's true. They're aspiring to inclusion. I mean, the history, remember one year, is anybody circle when the year we did? Because of course what we did was after we started doing the summer, we started keeping the JSLs together year round. The embodiments, that's exactly right. And one summer, or one winter, we were meeting at Temple, and we read Up South, Matthew Cunningham. Yes. And of course, that's the history of black people in Philadelphia. Yes, and eventually then we brought that into, and so there was a couple things. Number one, we would always pick a text that would completely disrupt the way teenagers thought about education. We had to pick a book that was so clear that never in their lives would they ever get a book like this in their hand, much less one to keep. Graduate students already, we don't care who's the smartest person in the world, but give us that book. Put it in the hand of 16-year-old. Because even if you can't read a page, the fact that this is disrupted the way that you view learning. You know, and the book had to be, well, anyway, I won't get too far in. But that year we did Up South is just one example. Because I remember some of y'all went over to see Countryman. Matthew Countryman's mother had been involved in the Northern Student Movement. I guess she knew church building. He came to a book signing at Barnes & Noble's in West Philly. And I was in D.C. that day. Because I think Tammy must have taken them over there. And he was like, where do these teenagers come from? With all these questions? Well, we were reading your book. You've been reading my book. This is an academic book, University of Pennsylvania Press, dense footnote scholarship where he's walking through Leon Sullivan. He's walking, in other words, the political power of Philadelphia has a history. Judge Nix. I mean, in other words, there have been blacks before. That's why we're able to have this space when we talk about Henry Nicholas. In other words, there are people who have seized power at Cecil B. Moore, people who have seized power at different moments. Did it translate into black community empowerment? Yes, at certain moments. They didn't know what we were doing in freedom school classrooms. You're right, it was the political power. Dwight Evans, at that time, was still using appropriations, I guess. You got people who are able to give us some cover. Was it Foundations? Is that where Martin Luther King was? Martin Luther King High School, what was the CBO?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but that's Dwight Evans' neighborhood. That's before he was in Congress. That was when he was a state rep, right? And he had such seniority for a long time. Dwight Evans was the chair of appropriations in the state of Pennsylvania, so he could control the money. So a freedom school was going to be in his district, and Martin Luther King, I guess, was the cluster at that time. This is before Lynn Ahmed was the cluster. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, yes, we have to have political power. Now the question becomes, what do you build with it? We knew they didn't care what was going on in our freedom school classrooms. So we tried to build the most free-minded curriculum so that a 16-year-old, and then eventually we had full control after the breakup, an 8-year-old, when we built the foundation with the Pathways curriculum, Jehudi, Ma'at, Sankofa, that's so far from CDF. Let's build something so that by the time the 8-year-old turns 38 and she's becoming a judge, what she's going to do on the bench is going to be driven by a worldview that has no relationship to one end. No, I seize this political power to transform this entire. And so that's what we were. That's the thing that scares people, because I don't think they know what we were doing.
And the bigger it gets, the easier it is for people to know, because
It's
been
That's right.
into the system.
That's
so
right.
Somebody knew what was going on. Eventually, somebody's gonna figure out, oh, they real. Because that was the thing about freedom school. I never encountered anything that like monumental and earth-shattering for black people that was that big. But it's like, it's almost like you got to go back to being silent. You think the CIA don't run in here and tell us what they be doing all the time? Like, they move in silence.
But
like,
see, Chris,
sometimes you gotta move in silence.
you saw it, you saw it, I saw it, we saw it. Those of us who were older saw it as earth-shattering because we had something to compare it to.
Mm-hmm.
The children just thought this was normal.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And that was the goal. You know what I'm saying? The children just thought this is what we do.
Hey, Dr. Carr, that's dangerous though.
That's the most dangerous. That's what she's saying. That's the most dangerous thing.
But I mean, it's dangerous because
I'm so sorry, brother. And we can really tell by the kids that are just like, this is too hard. I'm not gonna be here no more.
Right.
And go someplace else, and then next thing, you back? Oh yeah. And they
I don't want
want to
that.
talk about it. I'm back. I'm gonna behave. I'm gonna be right. I'm gonna do right. What you need me to do? I got you. Like so. We
That's
see
right.
that. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah. Exactly.
I wanted to add on to that as well. So I attended Delaware State, and I have a professor. His name is Peter Aharoni, and he wrote the book entitled The Sovereign Psyche. And yes. And then one of the questions he asked us was, what are you doing with the end use of your intellect? And I never really understood it until the end of the course, like what he was saying. And I feel like Philadelphia Freedom School kind of serves that, because no matter what, I know if I need something to go on in the park, or I need a permit or something, I can go see Sister Bahia in Parks and Recreation.
That's right.
I can go talk
That's
to that
right.
person who's able to write that grant.
That's
Exactly.
right. That's right.
It's about having that network and establishing those institutions as well. And so when I said, well, he asked, what institutions do black people have? I said freedom schools. And it was 3 other people in the room who said, I attended freedom schools as well. And so to have that bond and connect with them, it was from Baltimore, DC, and Delaware, just to see, like, I know nothing like Philadelphia freedom schools.
Well,
but
in Baltimore's case, where they had.
Oh, and then yes.
Right.
Right, so they did. And for a long time, CDF got it too. They just didn't know.
It's a strong chance that if they was in DC, ironically,
Yes.
the Children's Defense Fund is in DC, it's a strong chance they probably weren't with CDF. Because a lot of the freedom schools in DC ended up breaking off, like away from CDF.
A lot of them. And that's not a critique of CDF.
No, it's not. It's really, it's a fiscal